All right, so we're going to go back to this is number 6 in the series. We just finished speaking about what democracy is and what it isn't. Also, the court system that we're supposed to have that actually supports democracy and is like our safeguard against tyranny. So we're going to get into that a little more deeper. I'm just going to start again with a little bit more of the same video from the beginning, just to refresh how this is all linked. All right. Geez, it was nice to him, huh? I give you permission to go to your house. I'm being nice to you. Yes, that is wonderful and nice. I love that comment. That's how it starts, that video. So we're going to go into civilized people. We hear this, that we have a civilization a lot, right? So let's see if this is what you've ever heard anyone explain to you about what it means to be civilized. The phenomenon long held by civilized people, the consciences of a common law of 12 form a safer, purer tribunal than those of specially appointed individuals holding permanent offices, lucratively remunerated and bound to enforce government's legislation. So that's what we have, right? And that's what we've been told is civilized, the bottom bit, by allowing those individuals holding permanent office that are lucratively, I can't say that word, lucratively remunerated and bound to enforce government's legislation. That's how it's being delivered to us, right? As opposed to the consciences of 12 people. Like seriously, that's what we've been given. So that just shows you right there where we are really at, as opposed to what is the true way by which justice can occur, right? So we've never had justice. None of us have known it, ever. That's just how far removed we are from, why there's been so much pain and why we are in this situation where we're just in perpetual suffering. So here's another quote, I guess. Justice of law. Citizen juries educated and instructed to judge on the justice of law, which they mean legislation, and its enforcement can be relied upon to protect the people from the state. When the state breaches correct behavior in attempting to enforce injustices. That's pretty self-evident what we've been getting, right? We've been having it out this whole time, we've just not been aware of it. And now those who are aware can see it's right in our faces. It is for this reason that those who stand to gain money and or power from tyranny by the imposition of unjust laws, which really is legislation, regard genuine trial by jury as an obstacle to be undermined and destroyed. Now, this is really important because this is all linked to the Magna Carta, which is the actual British Constitution, all right? And we're going to get into that later, but that point there is right at the heart of why none of us know about the Magna Carta. Or if you do, we're laughed at. Because that's just what's at stake for these power grabbers, right? These people that we call the cabal or 13 bloodline families or, the establishment, whatever terms we have, that's what's at stake for them, because this whole thing right here, the genuine trial by jury, is the obstacle, is what kneecaps their entire ambition of that domination control hierarchy structure that they've been running. So that's why they've kept it from us. That's what's called occulted knowledge, because they don't want you to know that. If you did, their power goes. There's that curtain, Wizard of Oz, that curtain, that's it, it's gone. You can see right through it. And that's the only thing that's holding this whole thing together, is that lack of that knowledge. All right, so let me just pull this slide out of the way. So we'll get into the next one. The ultimate power. So this guy, Justice James Wilson, he was, I think, co-author of the American Constitution, which I would argue is a fraud as well, because they are actually still under the Magna Carta too, which is going to really throw a lot of people off. The empowerment of citizens by bestowing upon them judicial authority as jurors in trial by jury is which laws and measures passed by legislatorial majorities in the assembly could be judged, overruled and annulled whenever this was deemed by the jurors necessary to serve justice, liberty and interests of the people. So that's what he's written. It's a quote from him. There's the British constitutional system takes it one step further than just annulment, which I'm going to go into shortly. And that's why they had to hide the Magna Carta, because that last part was the actual kneecapping part, and they couldn't have that. So instead, this is what we have. I'll just bring up this slide. This is what we have, because none of us know what our true system is. And here we go. How tyrannies thrive. Removal from the jurors of their judgment on justice and equity issues transforms trial by jury into unlawful, one-sided, unfair mistrial by government judges. That's what we have today, and we've been living through since all of us have been alive. The corrupt method by which tyrannies thrive. So here we are, we've been sold this Australia lucky country. This is how we've been operating and not even had any clues. All right, we've been living in a tyranny. It's what's called, what's that word? Sheldon Walden put it, and Chris Hedges, I'm trying to think what he called it. Inverted totalitarianism. That's what it is. So we've been living in this system of inverted totalitarianism without being aware of it. This enables and obliges judges to enforce every persecution, stealth tax, oppression, money-motivated subterfuge, and injustice a government introduces, and which then lawlessly claim is the law. Right? That's who we've had as our elected representatives who have been representing us. That's who we've had doing this for us. Right? And we've always known something smelled, but none of us really had the information. Right? So here it is. It's right in front of you. What's been happening? It's undeniable. Right? How did it go from being able to afford to buy a house within like 10 paychecks or something, or a property, right, to now, I don't know, over 30 years, and you've got to go through this, death bondage, mortgage, like, how did that happen? Just prices went out, like through the roof, it just exploded. This is not an accident. No, this is just, that's just market forces, what we've been told. No, this is all a setup. Just step by step, more taking, because the corporate idea is there's only one word they know, and that is more. That's how they thrive, right? So I'm going to bring up that banking trust trinity that I showed you earlier, and then I'm going to compare it and show you the comparison of the British constitutional system. So let me just bring up the trust trinity just so you can see it again. Okay, so it's still three points of the triangle. The top is the executor, to this side is the creditor, to this side is the debtor, right? That's their system, how they enslave us, right? They take our sovereignty that we're born with innately, and they turn us into slaves through this system, right? That they create at our birth with that all caps name. Just like you find in the graves, in the tombstone, you find those all caps names, right? Which means we're dead. And now, this is the part that they don't want you to know, and what's written in the Magna Carta, right? This is actually in the Magna Carta, the 1215 Magna Carta that was signed by King John, or sealed by King John, should I say, with our articles, I think it was over 63, I think 63 articles are in it, that he's agreed to by putting his great seal on it. And when he puts a seal on it, that means it's bound in perpetuity. That remains until the people change it. Not government, not any monarch, only the people can change it. And the only way they can do it is come together in a Commonwealth-wide constitutional convention. And that hasn't happened. That means that 1215 Magna Carta, which is the British Constitution, is still in existence today, but you don't know about it. And there's really good reason. And this is why. Because it has its own trinity, right? 3 points of the triangle, same thing. Trial by jury. We're accused and the legislation are on trial, which I explain what happens. The individual juror is the final arbiter of law. Right? Then the second part, which we've spoken about, is annulment by jury. So I'll just give that a little bit more understanding. So annulment by jury is when that accused is found as innocent, then it's deemed that the actual legislation that brought them there is unjust. So now the jury has the power to actually begin the process of extracting that very piece of legislation from the statute books. All right, that's the second phase. Now, this is the kneecapping bit, the part they don't want you to know about, right? Inside that system, there is common law private prosecution, right? Now, in all these common law courts, you'll never hear this part, right? So anyone who goes down that route of looking for solutions in common law courts, they don't cover this last bit. That's why there is no actual solution out of slavery in that common law court, because they're still running it through the whole fraud. And until they tell you this last bit, the common law private prosecution, then you'll know that they're running a fraud. So here's how it works: that any office holder who was involved in that actual bill, whose name appears in that bill, that was deemed unjust, that brought one of the community members who was accused of breaching that legislation to trial, can now be privately prosecuted in their private and unlimited capacity as a man or a woman. They have no legal protection. They have no legislative protection, because that's all a fiction, right? Just as a man who has a conscience, they stand under the common law principles of committing no loss, harm, breaching the peace, and committing fraud, right? That's what they're on trial for. And any member of the public can prosecute them for free. And this happens straight away, not, years down the track. There's none of these, adjournments. There's nothing like that. They just get brought to trial. Now, you really got to think about that, right? Of how powerful that is, right? Because if we had had this from the very beginning, since 1215, there'd be no such thing as poverty, all this famine that exists, none of that. There'd be none of these wars. Do you know what I mean? That stuff that happened in Germany, with all this medical apartheid and stuff we're going through now, and all these experiments, none of that would be happening, right? Like, legislation has been turned against us. All crimes come from, and all breaches of natural law, all come from legislation. And this is the way it would have never occurred. This is what would have stopped it. It's really critical that you guys understand this, because this is where our power is. If we fully understand this, then we can move forward and we can put an end to all this stuff that we're saying we don't want to continue anymore. This is where our power is. It's not in the protesting. It's not in the My Will letters. It's not in, making these legal challenges. All those legal challenges, all they are, it's just like crossing enemy lines and asking the enemy to show you how to reload your weapon. When you go to a lawyer, that's what you're doing, because they're not working for you. They're working for the bar, the British Accreditation Registry. That's a foreign entity. That's who they take an oath to. So do the judges. They're all working for them, right? They are not here to dispense justice or administer it. It's got nothing to do with it. This is our system. This is how it's done, because it cannot be corrupted. And those people in the cabal, the deep state, they knew that. That's why they had to obscure this from your consciousness, because if you knew it, they've got no power, right? And that's what this is truly about. So if you can understand this, then everything shifts. And once you understand this truth, you cannot not understand it anymore. So I'm hoping that was a big help, guys, because we're going to get into a little bit more of the government stuff when we come back.